I don't really like Majora's Mask. Okay. Just let me explain. You suck. I'm aware that not liking just about any entry in the juggernaut that is the Zelda series is considered one of the highest forms of blasphemy here on the internets. It's right up there with putting pineapple on pizza. It just makes people go insane. For the record, I tried pineapple on pizza once. It wasn't bad. Oh, shush, you already hate me anyway. People love Majora's Mask for how risky and strange it is compared to many other Zelda titles. I agree that it's definitely one of the most unique entries in the series, but let's all take a second to remember that unique doesn't necessarily equal good. Now, I generally like Zelda. While I let many of the spin-offs pass me by, I have played through a number of the mainline games, and of those, here are the columns I'd put them in. There are a couple I love, and most I enjoy just fine, but there are a select few that I just couldn't get into. And one of those is Majora's Mask. If you had asked me a month ago what I thought of this game, I would have told you I outright hated it. But going back to it now, as an adult, kind of playing it at my own pace, I can say that I no longer hate it. I still don't like it very much, but I don't hate it. So, progress. But before I get into why I don't think it works as well as everyone else seems to, I feel it's only fair I go over what Majora's Mask does right. Because while I am a cynical ass, I don't think there's such a thing as a totally bad Zelda game.
How about a kiss for luck?
You've got to be kidding.
We don't talk about those.
Oh, and if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you have at least a basic knowledge of what the game is about. You don't need to know Majora's Mask backwards and forwards to understand my criticisms, but I felt like I should give you a heads up in case you're wondering why I'm not going into detail about every little thing. Okay? Okay. Majora's Mask uses the same engine, graphics, and many of the same assets as Ocarina of Time. So in terms of movement, exploration, and swinging your sword via the magic of Z-targeting, the game works just as well as it did in the first place. There's some inconveniences to get used to given that it's almost 18 years old, like constantly having to switch inventory items, but if I can forgive that in Ocarina, there's no reason I can't forgive it here. In fact, thanks to Majora's use of the N64 expansion pack, which is required to play the game, things are actually a bit improved. Everything feels noticeably snappier, most notably movement and navigating menus. So as far as your basic actions go, Majora's Mask is totally fine. I'm referring to the Deku, Goron, and Zora masks here. These three are used throughout the game to solve puzzles or reach areas normal Link wouldn't be able to by turning into unique forms. As a Deku scrub, you can use Deku flowers to launch yourself and fly short distances. While transformed into a Goron, you're able to roll across the ground at incredible speeds, barreling through obstacles. Become a Zora and you can breathe underwater and swim like a dolphin. Each mask is called on regularly throughout the game and provide variety that help prevent things from becoming stale. They're pretty well utilized. The theme of death is a constant throughout Majora, and seeing the residents of Termina realize their impending end from the moon crashing into the planet, and seeing how they cope over the 3 in-game days can be absorbing, and occasionally, fascinatingly messed up. There's still plenty of wacky characters and silly situations, but it's the more somber or tragic moments that stick with people and are likely to catch you off guard the first time you see them. Things get so dark at times that it's a popular theory that the entirety of Majora's Mask is either hell or some version of purgatory, and Link has actually been dead the entire game. Look it up, it's super interesting. And now, here's a list of some horrifically soul-scarring things in Majora's Mask. The little girl locking her father in the closet after he's cursed as a Gibdo, and him popping out when you get close. I knew this was coming and still jumped. Link essentially wearing faces of the dead to further his own goals while never revealing to their loved ones what happened to them or that he's not who they think he is. Tingle, who has been scientifically proven to be the worst thing ever, being introduced for the first time. This goddamn nightmare fuel. The 2 lovers that choose to accept their death as long as they can be together in the end.
This thing again because, oh my god!
And the elder Romani sister letting her younger sister try the Chateau Romani milk, which has similar properties to alcohol, in order to dull her senses so she's unaware of her inevitable death.
How is this game rated E for everyone?
Link sometimes does these sweet ninja flips when he's jumping across gaps. Not much to add to that, I just think they look cool. And finally, this is a neat game cartridge. The gold plastic, the sweet hologram on the front, it's just cool. Look at it. That's a kick-ass cart. Now that I've gotten all my positives out of the way, let's get to the real meat of this video. The things that make it impossible for me to enjoy this game anywhere near as much as I've been told I'm supposed to. Let's get this out of the way now. The whole 3-day time limit thing is a neat idea, but it's more of an annoyance than anything. Since you can just rewind back to the dawn of the first day whenever you want, there's absolutely zero tension to this ticking clock, leaving it to act as nothing more than a restriction that gets in the way and creates frustrating inconsistencies. First off, it leads to a good deal of waiting around for things to happen. Specific events or conversation opportunities trigger at fixed times, and if you want to make sure you don't miss them, you're left just standing there, staring at the slow-moving hands of time. You can use the Song of Double Time to jump to the start of each day and night, which is annoying in and of itself since you can't skip the time travel animation, and boy does that quickly start to add up. But a lot of incidents, like the old lady being mugged or the letter being delivered to Anju, happen in the middle of these time periods, so you're still stuck waiting around. The Legend of Zelda. Action. Excitement. Waiting for mail to be delivered. Now yes, if you're good at managing your time, you could go off, do other things, and come back later. But this is a Zelda game where it's easy to get sidetracked and distracted, so it's simply a safer bet to just stay put and make sure you're in the right place at the right time, lest you have to start the whole process all over again. Then there's the inconsistent rules of all the time travel shenanigans. For example, why do you lose your arrows, bombs, Deku Nuts, rupees, and bottle contents when you travel back in time? What reason is there for you to lose all that stuff? Well, you see, Craig, Link didn't have any of those things at the start of the first day, so when you rewind everything, his inventory reverts back to what it was when you first started. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clearing that up for me. Just one small problem.
Why do I still have all this other shit?
The bow, the bomb bag, the hook shot, all these masks. Didn't have any of that stuff at the start of the first day, now did I? So either one of two things should happen. Either all of this should be wiped from Link's inventory, which would be the single worst decision in the history of game design, or just let me keep my goddamn arrows. This is made even more pointless by the fact that you can easily refill most of what you've lost by going outside the city gates and thwacking some bushes. It only takes a minute or two, but why do I have to do this every time? It's dumb. And finally, there's my biggest issue with this whole premise. The whole point of allowing the protagonist to restart the timeline over and over again is to give them the ability to act on their knowledge of future events, a la Groundhog Day. But aside from knowing when things are going to happen, you can't act on this knowledge, which is infuriating. Let's say you do the entire tedious questline for the couple's mask, bringing items back and forth to each of the lovers and finding out the location of the thief's hideout Kafei is looking for. Now let's say you screw something up and have to do it all over again. Why can't Link just tell Kafei he knows where the thief is right up front? He's one of the first people you see when you reset the timeline, so just walk up to him, explain that you know who he is and what he's looking for, and tell him where to go. Even if you still have to wait until the final day, it would at least let you skip a lot of the drawn-out steps you've already had to do once. Instead of waiting for the bomb bag lady to get mugged again and again, why can't I take initiative and confront the thief before he even strikes, or warn her to go a different way? Why can't Link let the eldest Romani sister know that she's going to be attacked and tell her to delay or move up her trip? And don't tell me Link is mute and therefore wouldn't be able to say anything. While he's never given a dialogue box, it's been shown that Link does talk to people when he needs to, we just don't see what he says. And even if that were true, his fairy companion can talk, and she has all the same information, so why can't she spill the beans? I'll admit that this is all likely due to limitations of N64 cartridges, and what I'm asking for may not have been possible at the time, but that doesn't stop it from constantly bothering me. While I complimented the 3 primary masks earlier in this video, most of the other masks in the game are pretty much useless and not worth the trouble to find. Outside of the 1 or 2 very specific circumstances each mask was designed for, they do little more than take up inventory space. Sure, they get you rewards, more often than not heart pieces, but it's not like you need them. I got by just fine on the heart upgrades I got after each dungeon, maybe stumbling upon 1 or 2 extras along the way. It might not stand out as much if masks weren't a primary focus of the entire game, but they are. They're established as items you should be looking for, but once you realize how little you use all but a few of them, you wonder why you even bothered. Let me show you what I mean. Here's every mask, all 24 of them. Now, of these 24 masks, which ones do you actually use regularly throughout the game? There's the 3 main ones, so count those. If you want to find all the stray fairies, get the great fairy upgrades, which are very helpful, you'll use that mask, so count that one too. The bunny hood lets you run twice as fast, and that's great, so count that. And, that's really it for me. Though, to be fair, I know quite a few people also use the stone mask and blast mask a lot too, I just never did. So including those as well, that's 7 masks you can argue are used often enough to justify their existence. 7. 30%. Even if I'm feeling generous and also include the few masks you're required to get to progress through the main questline, those being the Garo, Gibdo, and Captain's Hat, that's still only 10. Less than half. The only reason you'd bother finding all the other ones in the game is because you need them to get the Fierce Deities mask before the final boss. And while it's undeniably awesome to destroy the bosses in about 10 seconds flat, the trouble of finding every mask still doesn't feel worth the effort. And because of that, unless you're a completionist, I'd recommend just skipping most of them. You'd expect that with only 4 primary temples in the game, which is down from the 9 present in Ocarina, that these places would be incredibly well designed and fun to play through. But I don't think they are. First, there's the Woodfall Temple, which is actually pretty solid. It's simple and straightforward, but it makes good use of your Deku abilities and offers no real frustrations. It's a decent start. Next is the Snowhead Temple, which again is mostly okay, but there is the annoyance of having to access higher floors by jumping narrow gaps in Goron form. The jumps themselves aren't difficult, but the roll can be a bit finicky, and if you're slightly off-center, you'll fly in the wrong direction and fall all the way down to the bottom, which means tediously climbing back up to try again. Although the boss waiting for you at the end of all that is admittedly a lot of fun, and probably one of the most unique bosses in the series. But from here, we go downhill. Then we have the Great Bay Temple, aka the Water Temple, and surprise, surprise, it sucks. It tries to be different than the notorious H2O-based temple from Ocarina of Time, having you turn switches to redirect water flow to access different rooms, but none of it is enjoyable. It's especially annoying that if you accidentally swim down a tunnel you've already been through, which is likely to happen since they all kind of blend together, you can't just go back. No, you have to go through everything again, solving all the same puzzles just to make it back to the hub area. And while I gave credit to the last boss, this boss is one of the worst, most irritating creatures in the history of anything. He's such a pain in the ass to hit, so the fight just drags on and on. Even diehard Majora's Mask lovers hate this fish fuck. And finally, we have the Stone Tower. The actual temple itself is again okay. My real issue with the Stone Temple is getting to the Stone Temple. First you have to go through this incredibly tedious fetch quest for a bunch of Gibdos at the bottom of a well. They each want something specific from you, and unless you looked up their weird shopping list ahead of time and came prepared, you'll be spending the next hour finding out what they want, which sometimes isn't even that clear, and running to go get it one at a time. It seems like this was included just to stretch things out for no reason. There's nothing fun about it. You do a few more things, fight a mini-boss, and wind up with the Elegy of Emptiness, which lets you make a clone of Link, aka... You then have to work your way up to the Stone Temple entrance by pressing down an obnoxious number of switches, which has you constantly swapping masks and making clones until you finally reach the top. God, it's awful! So of the 4 dungeons, you have 2 that are mostly okay, 1 that's straight up terrible, and another that's an absolute chore to reach. Not exactly a stellar showing, if you ask me. The save system in this game is trash. Remember how the saving worked in Ocarina of Time? Let me remind you. See? You see how quick and painless that was? But for whatever reason, Majora's Mask doesn't have this save system because it hates you. Now, there are 2 new ways to save your progress. First, there are the owl statues placed throughout the world. Primarily, they act as fast travel points, but you can also use them to save your game and quit playing. Here's the problem. When you do decide to save your game this way, the file created is temporary, and whenever you load it back up, it's erased. So if you do load up your owl file and something happens, like, oh, I don't know, the game locks up after an hour of progress since it's running on a system you've had since 1996, you don't go back to the owl statue. No, you start from the last time you permanently saved, making this particular method all but useless. Okay, so you want to permanently save your progress instead. That's easy, just play the Song of Time and go back to the dawn of the first day, which automatically saves your game. That's nice and all, but, you know, it comes with the caveat of having to start the cycle over and redo quest steps you may have been in the middle of! You see, I don't generally like having to repeat things I've already done, so whenever I obtain a new mask, song, or item, I want to save my game and make sure I keep what I've earned. But in Majora, saving what I've done means having to reset everything else around me. So no matter what I do, I'm losing some progress on something just for the crime of wanting to save my game. Why is it like this? It's not like the ability to save at any time would nullify the whole 3-day cycle thing. You'd still have to rewind the clock regularly to get things done. You'd just be removing the paranoia that comes with potentially losing progress after playing for long stretches. Ocarina of Time nailed this out of the gate, so why replace it with something so shitty? After all my bitching, I feel it's only fair I mention the Majora's Mask remake on 3DS that came out a couple years ago. Now, I have not played this version. I think it's pretty clear by this point I wasn't exactly itching to run out and play the game again. But from what I've heard, it does address some of the complaints I've made in this video. There are the upgrades you'd expect, the game looks and runs better, and the addition of the touchscreen drastically streamlines inventory management. In addition, you can travel to specific hours, which cuts down on waiting for events to trigger. More statues have been added to the world, and activating them now permanently saves your game. And there's also a bunch of minor tweaks and changes that would take all day to go through. So I'll just say this seems like the best version of Majora available. Again, I haven't played it myself, but I felt I needed to bring it up before everyone in the comments told me how much better it was. Just know that I know, and maybe one day when I've got nothing else to do, I'll give it a shot and see if it drastically alters my opinion.
Now, please understand that if you adore Majora's Mask, as many of my friends do, that I'm not here to take that away from you. That was never my intention. I'm simply explaining why the game frustrates me and why I was just never able to get into it, whether it be as a kid or now. But regardless of whether you think my complaints are entirely overblown, or you can see where I'm coming from, I think that we as a community, as Zelda fans, can all come together and agree on one universal truth. It's way better than Skyward Sword.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video and listen to me trash on what is probably a beloved game from your childhood. Try not to be too mean. I mean, we're all friends here, and friends can have differing opinions, right? Regardless of whether you like the video or not, please be sure to leave a rating down below reflecting what you thought. I'd also love to see discussion in the comments about the game or some of my arguments. I welcome it all. And if you would like to see more from me, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and check out some of my past work. I did a video about 90s video game commercials. There's a Zelda one in there, so it's totally relevant. And there's also one where I take a look at some educational games from my childhood.